Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Tuesday, Sam from Port Moody wrote an email to the Premier. This is what Sam wrote, and I quote, "I had been observing how the NDP is handling the PWD rates clawback. And Premier, you chose to make the harsh changes after the election by clawing back the PWD rates when these people are some of the most vulnerable people during the pandemic. It is incomprehensible," end quote. The Premier has, throughout the course of the last days, tried to dodge accountability by making the absolutely ridiculous claim that he is only one voice at the cabinet table. Well, to the Premier, that's simply not good enough. Will he stand up, do his job, and end the clawback?
Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. Again, members, I just want to give you a heads up. His Wi-Fi may not work as we expect, so he'll do his best. Minister.
Thank you. From Parliament Territory, I appreciate the question from the Leader of the Opposition. As we've said quite clearly, we're pleased that the benefit, which is for recovery benefit, is available to all 3.7 million British Columbians. And to just review, the members should know that in March, the province introduced the workers' benefit for which these individuals were not eligible. A supplement was put in place of $300 a month, and that was put in place for 3 months. It was renewed twice. We have the new recovery benefit for which individuals on income assistance and disability assistance are eligible, as well as those receiving the seniors supplement. And I would point out that by the end of March, all of these individuals will receive more money than they otherwise would have.
Leader of the Official Opposition on supplemental.
Well, thank you very much. And you know what the minister should know and be paying attention to are the voices of people in British Columbia, people with disabilities, low-income seniors. And frankly, they're getting tired of listening to this minister give the same answer day after day after day. Here's what Sam had to say to the Premier. I quote, "Again, the focus is now, not what happened 16 years ago or 2 years ago. It is now. And we will be watching you to keep your word. Because right now, you don't appear to be advocating, and instead, you took action, clawing back PWD rates. This is the saddest decision this government has ever made," end quote. So will the minister, the Premier, somebody stand up and answer Sam's concerns? Sam and thousands of other British Columbians like Sam. Will the Premier stand up and end the clawback today?
Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And if the opposition wanted to ask a different question, they would get a different answer. But the question has been the same, and the answer has been clear. Individuals receiving income assistance and disability assistance are eligible for more money by the end of March. And if the member will just cast her mind back not that long ago, she'll remember that her government was responsible for not just the clawbacks of the transportation supplement, maternity benefits, parental payments. They made seniors apply for their CPP at age 60, causing them to lose significant amounts of income. The province is committed to reducing poverty, and we've made important steps in that direction after years and years of inaction. I'm pleased, and I think the member should remind all her constituents that they are eligible for this funding as part of the recovery benefit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Peace River North.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Jewel Smith with the Council of Canadians with Disabilities said, and I quote, Cutting this $300 benefit in half and then eliminating it completely in 3 months is shocking and frankly quite cruel. We certainly did not expect the benefit to be cut before the pandemic was over, end quote. To the Premier, will he end this clawback?
Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
Thank you very much to the member for Peace River North. I can tell him quite clearly that the recovery benefit being eligible or available to 3.7 million British Columbians is a benefit that will benefit all our communities. And I expect that the member knows the story of how in March a workers' benefit was established to which they were not eligible. And the recovery benefit is now made available to 3.7 million British Columbians. And let me give you an example, because maybe this will help the member from Peace River North understand. An individual would have received $900 under the current system. With the benefit, they will receive more, $950. But it's even more significant for a single parent. Close to 20,000 single parents will receive $1,450 instead of $900. By my calculations, that's $550 more. So I understand the member has his job to do, but the province is providing assistance to those most in need, and we will continue to do so.
Member for Peace River North on supplemental.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, the minister, I think, is the one that is doing the math wrong. And every other British Columbian and everybody that's on social media, everyone who's been reaching out to myself, as well as I'm sure the minister, sees this in a very different picture. You know, one of the words I hear, this is now a Christmas clawback, is what this is, right before Christmas. And the government loves to go down memory lane recently. So let's go down memory lane. On March 2nd, 2016, the now Premier had this to say, and I quote, I want to plead with the minister, the then Minister of Social Development, listen to the people you're supposed to represent, not the spin doctors back at Public Affairs. It's your decision. Do the right thing. End quote. So maybe the Premier will listen to his own advice and he will do the right thing. Will he reverse this decision today?
Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his supplemental. I'm not traveling that far down memory lane. In fact, just to March of this year, we instituted a workers' recovery benefit, a workers' benefit that was made eligible to a certain number of people that did not include people on disability assistance or income assistance, and did not reach to the seniors who were receiving the supplement. So we instituted a $300 a month supplement. That $300 a month supplement was scheduled for 3 months. It was extended twice and continues until the end of this month. We now have a recovery benefit for which people on income assistance and disability assistance are eligible. So I'm pleased to say that at the end of March, those on income assistance and disability assistance, and indeed those receiving the senior supplement, will be eligible for more money than they otherwise would have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Saanich North and Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we move into the winter months, BC businesses are facing challenges like they've never seen before. It's heartbreaking to see how many family-owned businesses, the entrepreneurs, the investors in our communities are going to be closing the doors permanently. So far, this government, frankly, hasn't acted quickly enough to throw the lifeline to these businesses. The programs that have been developed have been difficult to access with a lot of red tape, and it's unclear the timeline about when the money will flow, Mr. Speaker. Today's fiscal update did not shed any light on the $300 million small business program that this government created back in September. This money is an essential lifeline for businesses and needs to be landing now to have the greatest impact. My question through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation: how many businesses have applied? How many have been found eligible and actually gotten out the door to help support small business owners through this winter?
Minister of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for his question. And we, of course, on this side of the House, we know that it's a challenging time, not only for small businesses, but people throughout BC. And the member talks about one grant, but I think he has to also acknowledge the host of things that we've been doing as a government to support small businesses. Just recently, a survey came out, Honourable Speaker, that 2/3 of all businesses in BC are functioning right now with supports of government. That's a significant number. 95% of jobs that we lost during COVID have come back. That's something that was raised again by the Minister of Finance today in the economic update. $470 million went to PSD rebates. We've brought in tax credits for payroll for employers that wanted to either hire new employees or bring employees back. And there's a whole host of others, Honourable Speaker. But I appreciate the member's question. We also know how difficult of a time it is. We've been working for the last 2 weeks since I've been named in this portfolio with stakeholders to find ways that more business can get access to this program. I appreciate the work of all these associations with us, and there'll be more to come shortly.
Member for Saanich North and Island supplemental.
I think what we're trying to get to with the point of this question is some actual substance. And unfortunately, what we continue to get, and what we've got quite often in our responses in this session, is rhetoric. We're looking for the numbers. We want to know how much of the $300 million which we in this place have put forward to businesses have got to businesses. We want to know how many businesses have applied. We want to know how successful this program has been. And unfortunately, there was a missed opportunity this morning. The minister just missed another opportunity to highlight the success of this program, if indeed this program has been successful. It's December. This program is now 3 months old. It's been 8 months since this House authorized the government to spend $1.5 billion. The only report that we've seen so far suggests 500 businesses have applied, meaning if they got the full subsidy, only $15 million of the $300 million, 5%, has actually been allocated. Those are old numbers. We're just looking for new numbers, Mr. Speaker. My question again is to the Minister of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. When can we expect a full and comprehensive update about how this money that's been earmarked for small businesses has been spent? And when will we know how many businesses have actually been supported for these holidays?
Minister of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I've already shared with the members that over 1,400 businesses have already come through the door. And it's important to note, Honourable Speaker, that the program was set up in a two-stage approach. First stage for these businesses was up to $2,000 for supports for them to build a financial plan for them for their own recovery, which has been well received by many businesses throughout BC. The second stage was the financial supports. But the member has to acknowledge the amount of investments we've made to support businesses throughout BC. It's considerable. I mean, we've got $190 million in tax credits for them to bring back employees or hire new employees. 25% property tax cut, Honourable Speaker. That's significant. Also, 65% of rent support from the federal government. You know, even the restaurant sector, we know they were hurt, Honourable Speaker. We took actions to expedite the patio licenses.
Members, let's listen to the answer, please. Minister, continue.
It's difficult to hear all the investments we're making, Honourable Speaker, but they should hear this, Honourable Speaker. It's important. It's important, Honourable Speaker, because it's a responsibility of all of us to make sure that businesses know that these supports are available for them. We've been meeting with stakeholders in various sectors, the associations. They all agree that they're going to work together to make sure every one of their members knows all the things that are available for them. I encourage all members of this House to reach out to small businesses in their communities, encourage them to apply for these supports. We want to help as many businesses as we can in this province.
Member for Abbotsford West.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Well, the Finance Minister has been busy. In just 3 weeks, she's managed to violate her government's commitment and legal obligations to First Nations. She's created further uncertainty around the budget process by altering basic timing and reporting requirements. And today, we are witnessing yet another blatant attempt at budgetary manipulation. The minister and her government are asking for authority to spend an additional $2 billion. It's $2 billion the government doesn't have, they're going to have to borrow. But to the point made by the member for Saanich, why did she wait, purposely wait until the final hours of this legislative session to provide a fiscal update that includes information about matters that are directly relevant to the decision facing members of this chamber? Her behavior, Mr. Speaker, obligates me to ask this question. What is she trying to hide? What is she trying to hide? And why is she taking a budget process that has been recognized across the nation for its openness, its transparency, its predictability, and turning it into exactly the opposite?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, the member's accusations are insulting at best. We have been transparent, we have brought in legislation, we have passed legislation, and we'll keep doing the work to take care of the people of this province.
Member for Fraser-Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In her report, Left Behind, the representative for Children and Youth told the heartbreaking stories of parents of children and youth with special needs who have been supported by the province. Pandemic support was stopped in the fall, and parents have struggled ever since, as the snap election meant no support. The representative was clear. The pandemic supports should be restored for a year. The government has refused. To the Premier, will he immediately provide families of children and youth with special needs with the support they need and deserve?
Minister of Children and Family Development.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the member for the question as well. And I really want to thank the families who took part in that report and shared their very powerful stories. And I want to thank the representative for Children and Youth as well for putting together such an informative and powerful report too. And I share her concerns, and my heart goes out to the families who are impacted. Daily life is tough and difficult and a struggle and a challenge anyway for many of these families. And then when the pandemic hit, of course, that made it even more difficult. And the system has been fragmented for far too long. And so the cracks in the system have been exposed with this pandemic. We did step in, we did offer support, and we're continuing to offer flexibility in the use of resources for respite. And families and people who serve families have told us that that has been very welcome. But the system needs a fix, Honourable Speaker. We need to put children and youth at the centre of the system. And in my mandate letter, the Premier has tasked me to do that. And I've already instructed staff to get moving on this as quickly as we can and to strike an advisory panel. Thank you.
Member for West Vancouver, Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the government seemed surprised that they had promised parents an extra $250 million for childcare in this fiscal year. The response from the Minister of Finance was, quote, "It would be an inappropriate place for those investments to be made," end quote. Mums and dads are feeling extra pressure this year and believe that government's promise was not an empty one. To the Premier, the promise was for $250 million in new funding this fiscal year for childcare. Where is that money?
Minister of State for Childcare.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And again, as a parent myself with a young child, I know that parents in BC have been struggling during this pandemic, making the very tough decisions about whether to return to work, put their kids in childcare, and the safety and the health of their children. And this is a challenging time for the sector as well. And that is why our government has been working hard to make sure we have the support available, including our temporary emergency funding and all the other programs in place to support childcare providers, to support early childhood educators and parents. And the $250 million that the member opposite keep quoting, that was from our platform commitment. And the member opposite should know very well that we're going through the budget process. There is a process to follow. And our government has been committed and has been working hard to make sure we bring an inclusive, universal early learning and care system for all British Columbian families when the other side of the government has neglected the crisis until 2017.
Member for Kamloops South Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The NDP promised that it would put small businesses at the front of BC's economic recovery, and that simply hasn't happened. The only thing that the small business community has seen from the NDP thus far in terms of help has been a single economic recovery grant program, which, Mr. Speaker, very few are applying for because very few are eligible for. It's a red tape disaster. Now, if we want confirmation on this, Mr. Speaker, you just have to look at the numbers. The Minister of Jobs has thrown out the number of 1,400 businesses that are in the process of applying for the Small and Medium-Sized Business Recovery Grant. That's of an estimated 15,000 businesses that the government projected would be eligible for this benefit. Now, I've asked these questions multiple times last week and this week. I asked them in supplementary estimates yesterday. I've asked them in question period. The member from Saanich North and the Islands has asked for questions. We're looking for detail. So I'm going to ask one more time. The question to the Premier would be this. Of the $300 million that's in this grant program, exactly how many dollars have actually been allocated to those that are in the process of applying for this funding? I'd like the government to answer that in detail today.
Minister of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And there's a couple of...
Continue.
Thank
Minister.
you, Honourable Speaker. And the member wants to know how much money is allocated, and I'm going to tell the member $300 million has been allocated. The member also fails to acknowledge that we have one of the most comprehensive recovery plans in all of Canada.
Members, let's listen to the answer, please. There's no point in asking a question if you can't get the answer. Continue, Minister.
We have one of the most comprehensive plans across the country, Honourable Speaker. One of the most comprehensive plans across the country. $470 million in PST rebates. Member failed to mention that in his remarks. $300 million, of course, he mentioned. $190 million in tax credits for businesses that want to either hire someone new or bring employees back. And we know many sectors face different challenges. We know that the restaurant sector faces significant challenges. We accelerated permits so that they can allow more people to have patio space during the summer. We brought in wholesale prices for them so that they could see savings on liquor pricing, Honourable Speaker. And this is not to even mention...
Members, please. Carry on. Minister.
That's not even mentioning all the supports that the federal government has put in place as well, Honourable Member. So I would say that the stats were clear, and Minister of Finance confirmed it today. We're at 95% of jobs that we lost pre-COVID have come back. We know with the new COVID restrictions that there's going to be some significant challenges for businesses over the holidays. We're going to continue to work with them to ensure that we make this program as accessible as possible so that as many businesses as possible can get the supports they need. That's our goal, Honourable Speaker. We want to support as many businesses and people through this difficult time in this pandemic.
Member for Richmond North Centre.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Yesterday, we asked the Minister a simple question. When will the tourism industry receive the financial support this government promised them? And what was her response? She used the pandemic as an excuse. What the Minister doesn't seem to understand is these businesses need help now because we are still in the middle of a global pandemic. My question is the Premier. I hope the Premier will answer this question. The Premier promised the tourism sector relief, and the Premier failed to deliver it. Why has your government failed to keep its promise?
Minister of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member again for the question. The first week on the job, I met with the chair of the task force that our government put into place. One of the key actions that we did was set aside $50 million to the task force. We have, in the middle of this pandemic, set aside $100 million for recovery to invest in infrastructure. The most immediate focus right now is people safety. But when this pandemic is over, we need to return to the business of tourism being on the map for visitors to come to British Columbia, and we want it to be safe. So for right now, we are working to implement the recommendations of the task force. I received it last week. I've met with the task force. There are 7 recommendations. I am doing the work, following the process. The members opposite are maybe suggesting that I shouldn't follow the rules. There are processes with public funds. You have to go through Treasury Board. There are processes, and the public service is working around the clock to deliver good news. Good news is coming, Honourable Speaker. Good news is coming to the tourism sector, and I thank the member opposite for the question because tourism is vitally important to our province, and we are going to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Surrey South. Member for Surrey South.
Speaker. So far this year, there have been 1,386 opioid deaths in British Columbia. They were brothers, sisters, mothers, and fathers, and they won't be there to celebrate Christmas with their families. To the Premier, how can we all work together to ensure that next year, fewer families have to face such a tragedy?
Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. Unmute, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for sharing our deep concern about the tragic loss of life, something that had hit British Columbia hard and early compared to the rest of the country, and something that the pandemic has made worse in every single turn. Extend our deep gratitude to the organizations on the front line, from paramedics to grassroots organizations to parent groups that have been advocating and proposing such constructive solutions. I'm encouraged that some of the measures that my predecessor, the first Minister of Mental Health and Addictions across the country, some of the measures brought in over the last 3 years had started to curve down the line of overdose deaths, but sadly the pandemic has made everything worse. And so we have been working flat out. The mandate that the Premier has given me to build more treatment beds, to expand overdose prevention services, to work on prescription safe supply, to advocate to the federal government for the decriminalization of small amounts of illicit drugs, the personal possession as a way to reduce stigma, is going to help all of those pieces, but no one single measure will do the work that is necessary to save the lives that we are committed to saving. I will note the new Surrey Mental Health and Addictions Treatment Response Center that was established in Surrey in the members' riding. That's just one example of when we work together and treat this crisis as the healthcare crisis that it is, pulling together. With so much more work to do, we're determined to save lives.
The bell ends question period.